Hello, beautiful people. How are you? How is everyone doing this wonderful evening? Tonight, we get to share and declare some things in Confession of a Boss Lady. I am hoping that everyone is doing amazing and everyone is having a wonderful evening. As usual, hey Laura, thank you for joining, and Lourdes, thank you for joining. You guys are amazing. Today, our topic is about triggers and what things trigger you, what triggers mean, how to help others that get triggered around you. And while I'm going through my weekly challenge of sharing this Facebook Live and other pages, I would encourage you to come on, share where you're coming on from, maybe share a little bit what your impression or idea of triggers are, and we can get ourselves going with this topic. And this is a good one. I love this conversation that we're going to have this afternoon, or this evening rather, because a lot of people come in thinking differently about triggers, and I'm hoping that we can shed some light on that topic. Welcome, Andrea. Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here. And I have one more share. I invite you guys to share as well. The intention of Confessions of a Boss Lady is to serve you powerfully with who you're being, and with the potential awakening to a better version of yourself. And you never know who this message is meant to serve. So I invite you to share, and also make this a dialogue, not just a one-way conversation. Because as you know, I'm kind of a newbie with Facebook Lives, and I'm just learning how to kind of really put it out there. Here I am sharing to a couple of the pages. If any of you guys know how I could take this Facebook Live to Instagram, that's one of the things I'm going to be doing next week. I've already got some suggestions from my VA and others, but again, I am a person of imperfect action. I believe very much in getting out here, being authentic, sharing with you guys what I know and what I feel would add value. And then we could, potentially all grow in this process. So I think I've got all my shares. I'll do a couple of invites to some friends and a couple of people so they can come and check things out here. Okay, so I think that's good. People will find us if it's meant to be. We'll allow the universe to be the one bringing everyone on board for us. So today we're going to talk about triggers for what they really are. And I always like to start with the definition of things so that we can kind of put things into perspective, right? And triggers are an event or circumstance that is the cause of a particular action, process, or situation, okay? So typically as a result of, so this is an experience that you have as a result of a feeling that has aroused within you. It could be a feeling from a particular action, a feeling from a past experience or trauma, and usually it's a feeling that's associated with a traumatic experience. And then when you are triggered, you experience a negative emotion, okay? So the response to something could be like fear, or sadness, or panic, or flashbacks, or pain. It could be rage or jealousy. So you are triggered by a thought or a experience that brings you back to that traumatic experience. Okay, so that's the definition of a trigger. And what it looks like could be any negative emotion. And this is an importance in our conversation tonight, because in speaking to one of my clients in the past week or so, she shared with me how in the past, before us talking about triggers and really defining it for what it is, and me inviting her to look into the trigger and how it was making her feel so that we could discover maybe the trauma behind it, she shared with me that in her mind, triggers was something that people did to her, right? So she would define it as such and such triggers me, right? Or such and such's way of being triggers me. And it's very different when we talk about triggers. If you're having a negative reaction to someone, that is different than that is potentially different. Okay, it depends on the specific situation, but that is potentially different than being triggered in general. Okay, because triggers are much wider in terms of where you could what could create a trigger. It's not just a person that for some reason has a different way of thinking or a different way of expressing themselves, and you find that to be what triggers you. Okay, most of the time a trigger is going to be something that triggers or sets off a past experience or a past trauma or a past fear. And in being triggered, you will have a negative emotional reaction. So sometimes triggers are phobias, right? It could be that you're afraid of something, and could be related to phobias, right? And you know what you're afraid of, but you don't know what the experience that created that fear was. And you could be in a normal situation or in a normal conversation and find yourself triggered and not know where it's stemming from, right? Or you could have things like aromas or odors trigger you. A trigger can really come from anything. And again, the emotional reaction to a trigger is usually negative. So it's usually going to be something like fear, sadness, panic, a flashback of some sort, pain, a remembrance of pain that kind of rises up, rage, jealousy as well. And then there's also physical symptoms that can manifest with that emotional reaction. So when I am put in a place of fear, my emotional reaction is usually my stomach, right? My stomach starts to kind of bubble up, or I feel it in my stomach, or what we call my solar plex chakra. And that's an emotional reaction, an emotional symptom. I'm sorry, that is a physical symptom of the emotional reaction. And why am I being so specific? Because when triggers happen, they happen so quickly, and they're caused by things around you that are probably commonplace or that are probably extraordinary, and it leads us to react to the thing rather than to sit with it a little bit and think, why is this triggering me? Why is this causing rage? Why is this causing anger? Why is this causing fear? Rather than placing blame outwardly, right? And saying, you trigger me. and maybe it's not the person per se, but something in what they're saying that causes that negative emotion, right? Something in what they're saying that brings up something that is a trigger for you, or a trauma, or a wound, or a past experience that has caused pain. So it takes a little bit of emotional maturity to stop or to reflect back on the moment when you were triggered and begin to place where that is potentially stemming from. And I know that's not the easiest thing to detect in our experiences. So I'd love to hear if this is resonating with anyone, or if you have an experience where you have been triggered and you may not know where it's coming from, right? So triggers are huge. I want to, like, for example, recently I was speaking with another client, and she was sharing how she was feeling kind of guilty because she was having a conversation with one of her best friends. And in the conversation, it was a very casual conversation. And they were talking about another friend that's about to get married, or is about to be proposed, or something like that. I don't remember exactly the conversation, but the importance of it was that my client reacted aggressively in her response. She said it was kind of, you know how sometimes we are a bit aggressive, but it's not to where you're kind of in denial and you're being conflictive about a conversation. And she was saying, I don't understand why I was so short and so combative with my friend when we were having a casual conversation. And as we talked a little bit more about that experience, and here she is feeling a little bit of guilt about treating her friend this way, feeling a little bit of shame because, you know, there was a lack of maturity she felt in how she reacted to the conversation. And there were all these, you know, negative self-talk going on in her head about how she had reacted to her friend, and a casual conversation about a friend that is potentially gonna experience a proposal or get married soon. And as we chatted and sat with the feeling, we uncovered that this was a trigger. The conversation in itself was a trigger because she, in the past, had experienced a very traumatic experience where she was left kind of at the altar, right? Like a couple of days before her wedding, it dissolved. And any conversations around weddings, or anyone that is, you know, in an excitement or experiencing the, you know, all the excitement around a wedding, creates this trauma, this trigger for her, because it brings back all the feelings, all the fears, all the panic, all the rage that she experienced when she had this situation. And it was a great breakthrough for us in our conversation, because it's something that happened years ago. She's actually in a beautiful relationship now, but she had not sat with the negative emotions that the thought of a marriage or a wedding was bringing up for her. And these are the triggers. This is the importance of the triggers. So again, what are some triggers that you've experienced or maybe evidenced in other people? And it could be very a matter-of-fact experiences. I'm going to give you one of my triggers, right? I mean, that's why this is called Confessions of a Boss Lady, right? Because it's about sharing authentically and transparently how I have been in the past or how I'm evolving. And for me, it's funny because we're in the month of October, and you know that October is breast cancer month. And it's funny, this is very triggering for me. My mom passed of metastatic breast cancer, and I've shared the story with you guys. It's actually one of my breakdowns that led to this amazing breakthrough in life that I have chosen for myself now. But there's still things that trigger me about that traumatic experience in my life. And it's funny things, and sometimes it's a little bit embarrassing because it's so trivial, but things like seeing the pink ribbon will trigger me because there was so many pink ribbons everywhere we went for my mom's treatment, right? Every time we were in her chemotherapy or in her radiation or just at the oncologist getting the results to her last blood test, this was the symbol of this sickness. And it's a beautiful signal because it signifies all the help and support and donations that people are doing for the cause. But I can't help but have all the emotions and all the feelings of that experience when my mother was going through, her breast cancer and all the treatments. I can't help but have that feeling rise up in me when I see anything, associated with the pink ribbon maybe. And of course, I've identified it, and I'm able to process it very quickly. But sometimes our reactions are faster in our body than it is in our mind. And I'll feel the stirring of that fear and of that panic and of that very, the sadness that I was engulfed in that time of my life. I will feel it physically, and it will trigger me, even though in my mind, I know that this is a great cause that's supporting a huge need. But by the time my mind catches up, I've already been physically triggered. And obviously, it's to the point where you may not see any outward reactions to it. Like if I'm hanging out with someone, it's not to where they can maybe detect it. But I have to kind of, talk myself down. I have to be like, okay, wait, what's going on? Why am I so sad all of a sudden? Or why am I, so anxious all of a sudden? And find that place within me that says, oh, yeah, it was just this visual or this experience. So I wonder if you're that conscious of some of your triggers, because that's a blessing when you're able to recognize some of your triggers, understand them, and see how they impact you. So I'd love to make this a dialogue, like I've mentioned. Hi, Mercedes Medina. Oh my God, friends from back in the day when I was in my neighborhood in New York are showing up. I'm loving that. And yeah, I want to hear what your thoughts are about triggering, being triggered, experiencing and awakening in what is triggering you, right? Because a lot of it is saying yes to it. Okay, where is this coming from, potentially? And granted, we have gone through traumatic experiences or very sad experiences that we have buried so deep inside of us that when we're triggered, we're not even able to define where it's coming from, right? I get that. That's the example of my client with the wedding, right? And my example of the breast cancer ribbon before I was able to place it. Like, to be honest, I was feeling a little shame with the breast cancer ribbon, because this is a cause that I should be behind. And this is a cause that, you know, I should be 100% all in on. And I am. I believe in it, and I understand how true it is, but it still triggered me. Hey, Tracy, how are you? Thank you for joining. You're awesome. We're talking about triggers and sharing how some triggers are just so, some things that we're triggered about are so buried inside of us. And then that's funny, because as I share this experience with my trigger around the whole breast cancer thing and the breast cancer ribbon, you know, that in the beginning, before I started to look at it deeper, there was some shame around feeling that way, because this is such a wonderful cause and something that so many people are behind. And it made me almost not look deeper into, wait, why am I feeling this way about this cause? Why am I, you know, even doing the walk and the run, the first year that my mom passed, I couldn't get myself to go do the walk. I donated to the cause because in my mind, I knew it was the right thing. But being around that, I was so scared to unveil where this feeling was coming from. And it was a liberation for me when I realized that the breast cancer ribbon was triggering me, because it brought up all the fears, all the panic, all the wounds that I experienced during my mother's cancer treatment. So it makes sense. I could tell you that there are some smells that trigger me from that era, right? I can walk into a hospital and immediately get triggered from that experience that I had. That makes much more sense. I was able to connect that quicker, right? It makes sense. I remember several months after my mom passed, I went into the actual ward that she was staying in the hospital, and that was a crazy trigger. Those are direct lines to triggers. But what I wonder is, which triggers are so deeply, which traumas, let's say, are so deeply embedded and buried within us that we can't even identify where it's coming from, you know? So that is important for me to put out there. Like when you're feeling fear, when you're feeling panic, or when you're feeling, you know, sad, or maybe it doesn't, you can't identify the feeling, but it does manifest physically. I know for me, it's in my stomach. When you're feeling those things, start to ask the questions. Where's this coming from? Let me sit with this. And instead of being, you know, so quick to point the finger at something or someone, I invite you to consider looking deeply. And then what are some ways that we can help other people when they're triggered, or help ourselves when we're triggered? You know, understanding and unveiling the source is the biggest thing, because you feel liberated. You feel like, okay, now I understand. I have an awareness of where this trigger is stemming from, and I can go to work. I can do the work to help myself, you know, be liberated and break free from this, you know? So that's definitely one of the things I would recommend, is sitting with it and trying to understand, explore, be curious about a trigger rather than trying to fold it in and just, you know, lie about it or deny it. You know, if you're being triggered, be authentic about it and say, you know, I don't know what it is, but something's triggering me about this conversation, or something's triggering me about where I am or this experience. And then find people, surround yourself by people that understand you and are not just judging you. One of the fears that I had with this whole experience and trigger around the breast cancer ribbon that I just shared was being judged. Like, I felt, okay, if I tell anyone that I get very sad when I see this, you know, they're gonna judge me, right? Because me, of all people, who lost my mom to breast cancer, should have a sensitivity to that initiative. And so I didn't look deeper. I would just shut down and say, well, this is probably part of my grief, and just leave it alone. But when I was unapologetically authentic and decided to open up to that conversation with people that I loved and that I knew loved me, I was able to, in talking through it and hearing myself, right? Because I kind of think as I talk. I was able to get to the bottom of it and release the shame. So I want to say hello to Lucy. Welcome. I want to say hello to Dulce. Oh my God, one of my aunts from New York. Hello. I want to say hello to Joyce. Joyce, hello. We're all set for that cruise in January. Joyce is one of the ladies helping me with setting up our retreat at a cruise in January. So welcome, Joyce. So happy to have you here. And let's see what Laura's saying. Laura says, being around judgmental people definitely lowers my confidence. And then there's a big domino effect. Yes, 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 Laura, that is so true. And that is, being around judgmental people is one of the things that could be misidentified, right? As that person triggers me, right? You want to say the judgment in that person triggers me, and what in that reflects on me, you know, what in that is showing me a part of me that I should look deeper, right? So that's the piece there. Like, that's the rub, that's the nuance that we get to be a little bit curious about, right? In the past, you know, I'd come across people that I would automatically define or decide that I wasn't, you know, I wasn't like attracted to that person, or, you know, I didn't like that person, right? I don't know. I don't know what it is about such and such that I don't like. And, you know, it's very easy to stop and leave it at that. What I invite you to consider is take a look deeper into what it is about that person that you don't like, what it is about that person that's triggering you, right? Maybe look at where you feel that in your body. Where do you feel the trigger? Like, sometimes if I feel it in my throat, I know that it's a feeling of kind of inferiority. Oh, wow, the word came out correctly. Usually those R's don't work that way. So in my throat, it's like, oh my God, I can't express myself as I would want to. And what about what this person is saying or doing or how they're being is triggering past thoughts of me not being able to express myself, or having to play it small maybe. You know, it's interesting once we start to look at these things and we start to kind of bring them back to the parts of us that are asking for light, asking to be unveiled, asking to be seen. So I want to invite you guys to look at these topics more from a point of view of where's the lesson here, right? If it's a trigger, where is the lesson here? Okay, here I am. I'm feeling sad because I'm looking at this breast cancer ribbon, and this is such a wonderful cause, and there's so much support that's going to be given to avoid what my mother lived, and this is a wonderful thing. So why am I so sad? Why am I so taken aback from this? And start to dig deeper into that, right? Well, it has to do with all the memories that it brings up. And now when I could place the trigger on the memories, there's an unveiling, there's a liberation there. There's an opportunity for some light to be shed on that. And there's a discovery that says, you know, there's more work to be done, Patty, around the healing. There's more work to be done around this this experience that you had. And that's great, because that gives me empowerment. Now I know that it is me who's empowered to choose differently and to make the effort to work on that piece. And that is where, you know, the light comes in. And the last piece I want to leave you guys with in terms of triggers and anything else when you're doing work on yourself is be kind and compassionate with yourself. Send some love to that inner part of you that's got the shame around the experience. Say some beautiful words of acceptance around this entire exploration, because we tend to be pretty vicious with ourselves, and our thought life tends to be very negative, and we're hard on ourselves, and that doesn't allow us to discover and unveil the parts of us that are going to make us self-expressed and expansive. So I want to invite you to bring some self-care into the piece as well. Okay, so questions that I had, you know, I put in some questions for you guys around the Facebook Live. I want to know what's a right time frame for you, right? We're doing this and we're discovering what's right. I want to know, is 15 minutes a good amount of time? Is 30 minutes? Does it not matter? Depending on, you know, as long as the subject is engaging. And also, I would love to introduce guests on these sessions, right? We're going to be doing these every week. And I'd love for some of you ladies that are feeling maybe triggered or that have felt that some of the topics that we've discussed so far resonate with you. I'd love for you to join me on one of these and hear your story and how your story can impact others is part of what we want to experience here. So we're at 32 minutes. So I'm going to say my goodbyes. I love that all of you are joining me. Please continue to share these. And if you have, you know, some of this is triggering you, right? Or you feel you want to have a conversation around this, remember that on my website, I always have the opportunity for you to set up a free Get Unstuck call with me, where we can explore what are some of the things that are holding you back. And also go on there and check out some of our upcoming events. We have a upcoming retreat, a BossLady retreat in November, and I'd love for you guys to check out the website. I think I'll put it on the comments below so you guys could experience it. Have an awesome evening. Thank you so much for being part of this endeavor and this experience. I'm having a bunch of fun with you guys. And please share what you would like for some of your upcoming topics. What are some of the things that you'd like us to bring to this platform? Alrighty now, have a nice afternoon, or evening rather. Yes, have a nice evening. Bye-bye.